Ex-soldier and explorer Ed Stafford has set himself an incredible mission: to be the first to walk the entire length of the Amazon River. It's over 7,000 kilometers of the toughest terrain on the planet, and he's got a staggering 3,200 to go.
We're in the middle of nowhere.
Teeming with deadly wildlife.
Ow! Ow! It has gone through its tendons.
Now he's about to enter South America's most remote jungles.
This is proper survival now.
On his 2.5-year journey of a lifetime to conquer the world's largest river.
My name is Ed Stafford and I'm currently trying to attempt to walk the length of the Amazon River. I've been walking for 14 months and I've got 14 more to do, so I'm about halfway.
33-year-old Brit Ed has walked 4,000 kilometers in 400 days across Peru. So far, he's encountered the drugs trade.
The guy's just back there to advise us to run.
Stumbled into an illegal logger's spider monkey feast.
It's a bit of its tail.
And been invited to a coming-of-age ceremony with the Takuna tribe.
Absolutely trolley cheers.
Ed is filming everything himself. There are no camera crews.
I have been walking with local guides the whole way, and one of whom is Cho Sanchez, who's still walking with me today. He's been walking with me now for about 9 months.
Ed will need all the luck and determination he can muster to follow in the tradition of his hero, David Livingstone, the Scottish jungle explorer of the 1800s.
Unfortunately, the tricky part is still ahead.
Ed has already walked 4,000 kilometers from Peru to Colombia. Now he's in Brazil and has over 3,000 kilometers to go. The first section is a bleak 12-month jungle march from Tabatinga to Manaus, where the two biggest tributaries meet. Then they plan to follow the river another 2,000 kilometers to the Atlantic Ocean. Ed starts this section of his walk at the Brazilian border. He'll walk with Sam Dyson, a 32-year-old Brit who he's arranged to meet on the track.
Slightly apprehensive about what we're going to do, but I'm quite excited because I don't know what's going to happen.
Sam was impressive physically. He was a Shaolin warrior monk, one of the leading martial artists in the UK now. I thought that's his equivalent to my military training.
That's sort of all right?
Yeah, it's good, mate. He didn't have any jungle experience, but I thought he just had the toughness to get through. It was great to have somebody that spoke English.
The Amazon quickly whips him into shape.
Okay. First time in the jungle, really. And the heat, I just can't cool down. And I've drunk 2 litres of water in 45 minutes. And yeah, it's hard work.
It's 33 degrees centigrade with nearly 100% humidity. They have to walk 500 kilometers to Porto Seguro, the last town printed on their map.
Would you say it was a tough leg, Sam?
Yeah, but hopefully I'm relatively acclimatised now. Okay. All right.
It's the end of the rainy season. The Amazon has burst its banks, so they are forced to walk through swampland.
Okay, deep. Yeah, I'm out of my depth. Yeah, I'm running.
The humid jungle conditions start to play havoc on Sam's feet.
Can you see that? I'll give it a squeeze, it just oozes pus. Like that. Which is amazing.
Sam's not been having a good day, I think it would be fair to say. The humidity and the constant dampness means that nothing heals at all, so you've got soggy, festering, infected toenails.
It's all gone black under the edge of it, and you can see there, see it's just oozing pus out and blood.
This is dangerous. A septic toe in the jungle can easily turn gangrenous. If it's not treated properly, it'll have to be amputated. otherwise it could become fatal.
Oh, shit. You've got to warn me when there's logs.
Every step he takes is torturous.
Yeah, I've lost 5 toenails. There's pus coming out of them each day.
With his feet so sore and swollen, he's forced to remove his boots.
This blood has just sprayed out from under my toenail.
He disinfects his toes with the iodine he's carrying. But in the end, he has no choice. Sam has to leave the expedition to seek medical help.
That was the time when I was realising that I was more comfortable with just Cho walking through the jungle, really. I mean, Cho is an incredibly self-sacrificing person. He always was there to help me, and Sam coming out made me realise that we don't need anybody else to complete this expedition. Cho and I are fine on our own, really.
Está loco, ese no sabe qué está haciendo, dije así. El mundo lo cambia solo los locos, dije así.
I've just woken up and I looked above to my mosquito net and I thought, oh, there's water droplets on the top. No, it's not water droplets, it's holes. And ants have eaten everything.
A legion of army ants have made a raid on Ed's kit. Army ants attack en masse, eating any invertebrates that get in their way, from tarantulas to scorpions.
These little things. Dig that. Pincers in. This is my mosquito net with my head completely through it. That's how big the holes are. The cord on my rucksack just snapped because the ants had eaten it all. I just rethread it completely by feeding it through the holes that the ants had eaten, and it works fine thanks to the ants.
On day 480, Ed and Cho veer south, away from the Amazon's mainstream and deep into the isolated Brazilian jungle. For the next 6 months, they will be at the mercy of wild animals and deadly tropical diseases during the scorching dry season. Their next stop is the tiny town of Porto Seguro.
Oh, yes, we have a house and we've got a big river and more houses. Yeah, we have a small community.
Porto Seguro is the last village marked on Ed's map and marks the end of the Tacuna tribe's land. 110 people live here, fishing the river in isolation, determined to keep their identity.
Hola. This little chap behind me is a spider monkey, and her name is Rita. Hi, Rita. You can see her tail is now wrapped around her arm, and that's because it's fully prehensile and acts like a fifth limb, so she can swing through the trees. Thank you very much, Rita. Thank you. Thank you.
The land around the river is still swamp. So Ed and Cho must head straight into the jungle and walk inland for 730 kilometers until they reach the town of Kauari.
It meant that it was inherently more dangerous. The further we were from the river, the further we are from safety and our natural evacuation route. So the plan was that we'd resupply at the different tributary rivers that we'd cross, and we'd just literally head off on a compass bearing and head straight into the jungle. 36 kilos. This is such a stupidly remote leg that we have to carry a lot of food, so that means we're going to be going really, really heavy.
To survive the next 3 months, they will have to live off the land, fishing and foraging.
Normal.
The Amazon teems with life, including 2.5 million different species of insect. Among the most aggressive is the Brazilian wasp.
That one was high enough for us all to be able to get under it very easily. Sometimes you don't even notice them. Ow! Ow! Fuck me! Ow! Oh, fuck. One got me in the throat. And swallowed a few. Fuck. Ow! Ow!
Ed le veo que está toseando y agarro y la avispa que está que le pica por su cuerpo y él está que filma ahí.
I'm really fucking angry now. How the fuck did they get down inside my top? Oh!
Porque yo me reía, jaja, y peor que pobre pelada.
3 times in a fucking day is too many.
Covered in stings, Ed advances stubbornly through the jungle. But disorientation and starvation are only weeks away.
We're 90 kilometers from the next community and we have no food. No food whatsoever.
Explorer Ed Stafford and his Peruvian guide Cho are marching across remote virgin jungle to avoid the flooded main channel of the Amazon River. They have no local guides, and without the river or any paths to guide them, they are simply following a compass bearing east, cutting a path as they walk.
After 6 hours of walking, we've done 2.1 kilometers. It's an obvious thing, isn't it, walking through a forest like this, that if you let it get to you, that it's going to be so much harder. And yet it is so difficult at times, keeping your sense of humour because deep down you don't find it very funny. It's not very funny.
They must navigate over 730 kilometers of this terrain before they rejoin the Rio Amazonas at the town of Kauari. Ed has no idea where the next settlement to resupply might be. Their main source of carbohydrate is farine, manioc root, which has been roasted and dried into a powder.
Literally ration it out, spoon by spoon.
It's a staple amongst native Indians and a perfect lightweight supply of energy on long-distance treks. But they can only carry so much and have to ration their daily food intake by over half. Even then, their supply of farine runs short after 1 week.
Got half a cup of farine between the two of us a day.
After another 3 days, Ed and Cho are now over 70 kilometers from the safety of the river. Water, too, becomes scarce.
One little puddle here.
They are forced to draw it from smaller and smaller pools.
This tastes bizarre.
Another 2 days' walk, and the forest floor has dried up completely.
Not having any water is probably the most serious thing that can happen to anyone who's living out in the wild, and we won't be able to exist for more than 2 or 3 days, really.
They move slowly through the forest. Then, finally, late the next day, they find what they're looking for.
Okay, we found ourselves a puddle, which is just literally a footprint of Cho's that he's just opened up.
The water is stagnant and swarming with microbes.
That's really quite clear.
They let the water settle and then boil it. But before long, it's clear Cho is in free fall.
His vision's going dark and he's got quite severe headache. Very severe, you can see he's in a bit of a state. It's basically because we're not eating enough nutrition. And this afternoon, he has to walk. There is no choice.
Ed insists they keep going, but before the day is out, Cho collapses, exhausted.
Bloody hell, look at Cho.
Y es más, mi mochila que tenía ya no las podía cargar. Y tuve que tirarme al suelo y ahí estar y no tener acción a nada.
If Cho was seriously ill, he's dead, and that's not being melodramatic at all. That's just the facts.
The mental strength it takes to actually put our rucksacks back on again is ridiculous.
Ed forces Cho to his feet and the pair set off east through the forest with hardly any food. The nearest hospital is at Tefe, 100 kilometers north. Ed has no idea if Cho could make it that far. The few calories that Cho can eat don't stay down for long. All Ed has to offer Cho are 3 ibuprofen pills. They desperately need clean water to help him stabilize.
Just thrown up for the 4th time now.
There was a feeling of being really out there on our own, and if anything went seriously wrong, then yeah, we just had to deal with it.
It's raining, thank God. We have water.
The rain comes just in time and gives them a chance to rehydrate with clean water. Cho's symptoms start to improve within a few hours, and the worst fears are allayed.
Rico, no? Rico.
That is beautiful. And no need to purify. Right, I'm going to fill up again.
But the pair have moved only a few kilometers in the last 2 days and are still drastically short of food. Even on starvation rations, they must keep walking.
If I just collapsed and our daily ration of farine is now in the fire on the floor. I'm a little bit emotional about the farine, but it's just a bit gritty. Don't think Cho's too happy.
The spilled farine was the last Ed and Cho had left. Now without food and still over 100 kilometers from civilization, the unthinkable happens.
Not a single indication of a single satellite. I've never seen that before. We're 90 kilometers from the next community or town that we know of that exists, and we have no food. No food whatsoever, full stop. It's quite a situation.
Ed's maps show too little detail to be of any use navigating this far from roads.
The 1 to 4 million map was about the equivalent of trying to find Tesco's with an atlas of the world.
All Ed can do now is follow a compass bearing east and hope for the best.
I'd be lying if I didn't say the most overriding feeling is hunger. Unbelievable.
After 2 days' walk with no food, Ed finally comes across a small stand of palm saplings. The growing tips yield a vegetable known as heart of palm, which is full of the carbohydrate they so desperately need. A 4-meter high sapling yields just enough edible flesh for a day's walk.
Never, ever, ever, ever had such a boring vegetable. It tasted so good.
The fresh meal restores Cho's health, and after a day of rest, he's fighting fit.
Está bueno.
Está buena.
Their luck continues, and after another week's arduous trekking, they hit an oasis. They are getting closer to the main river channel and find a tributary stream that has spread out into a shallow lagoon.
We came to a river which was big enough to fish on, but I had very little faith that Cho would actually be able to catch anything. And he came back with about 30 fish, and so it was phenomenal, and we ended up naming the river Miracle River because we just made pot after pot after pot of fish broth.
This is a black piranha. Oh, you can see there, look at him, look at that bite reflex as he bites.
Ed prepares a makeshift smoker. Any fish they don't eat will be preserved and carried with them further into the jungle.
They're coming on really well, and there's little bits that are just crispy that taste absolutely fantastic.
But the fish aren't the only lagoon inhabitants.
Hay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, son caiman, babe.
Huh?
Son caiman. Sorry, I'm a little jumpy. The caiman in here, I suspect, that are up to about 11 or 12 feet long.
Caiman are a species of alligator and are the largest predator in the Amazon, hunting animals as big as deer.
We were going to go and collect more fish out of the nets, but we're not anymore because we're scared. Isn't that right, Joe? Where's Joe? Oh, sorry, Joe's. Joe's still washing. Righty.
By morning, the reptiles have put an end to any fishing.
That wasn't a terribly good night's sleep. Thrashing in the water all night long. Our nets have gone completely.
The last catch is a young caiman who drowned in the net.
One caiman head. To say the meat's like chicken is such a cliche, isn't it? It's actually more like fish. Luckily for us, because we never eat fish.
The pair are now living almost entirely off the land, and Cho's health is fully restored.
With a bit of piranha, a bit of heart of palm, the only thing we're actually bringing with us is salt. But we're going to survive.
For me, the time when we had to improvise and we had to make do with what we'd got, and when the kit was breaking and we were running out of food, was the sheer adrenaline of knowing that our lives depended on our ingenuity was fantastic, actually.
After 91 days and 549 kilometers walking through virgin jungle, they hit what seems to be a road.
¿Cómo estás? ¡Yay! ¡Estamos aquí!
¡Yeah! Estamos aquí en la carretera. ¡Yeah!
The road is in fact a petrochemical pipeline which carries fuel through the remote forest towards their destination, Kawari. Their GPS now has signal from satellites, and after another 30 days, they have made it back onto the main channel of the river, which is now known as the Rio Solimões. But ahead wait two fundamental challenges. Ed's own body
It has gone through to tendons. Ah!
and mind.
Inside my head, there's a war going on.
Explorer Ed Stafford and his guide Cho Sanchez have been walking for over 200 days east across Brazil, past the town of Kawari and back towards the main river channel. Ed has been walking for over 4,700 kilometers from the Pacific coast of Peru, north into Brazil, then east across the vast tract of unbroken jungle in the Amazon basin. After 18 months en route, a second wet season is almost upon him. If he and Cho don't reach the city of Manaus before the rains, they face wading the next 470 kilometers through flooded forest.
And with the oncoming wet season, there was an increasing amount of sort of dread, really, that we were going to have a horrendous time walking through the flood.
We're dangerously close to the Amazon. The rivers here rise and fall at an alarming rate. We've only set up camp half an hour ago and the river's risen about 8 inches, 10 inches, maybe even a foot.
They follow the Solimoas as far from the main channel as possible, but still can't avoid walking in water up to 4 feet deep. Chronic tiredness begins to take its toll.
Ow! I just fell down the bank behind Cho, and I was holding my machete, and it's just taken the big chunk out of that finger and then into that as well. It has gone through into tendons. Ah! Ow! Right, let's get some duct tape on it.
Ed manages to stem the bleeding with an improvised bandage, but without antibiotics, he now risks a serious infection.
And it's hard to stay strict with yourself after so long. Very lucky not to lose my little finger, and I'm not exaggerating.
A week later in the town of Orokeminar, Ed is checked over by a doctor who treats his machete wound and swabs an open sore on his arm.
A gente vai fazer, né? Pode ser. A característica dela não é.
But despite the doctor's confidence, Ed tests positive for cutaneous leishmaniasis, a flesh-eating disease.
As I don't want to be permanently disfigured, I've got to get some medication to go on a course of this. Okay, today I'm going to try and intravenously inject myself for the first time in my life. A little bit apprehensive, I have to say. Okay, now I'm just going to inject very slowly. Remove the needle, and that's the first ever intravenous injection I've done.
Two weeks later, Ed's body buckles again.
I've just got this huge bag of fluid in my elbow and in my knee. All my joints seem to be going funny.
Ed decides the fluid needs to be removed if he is to continue.
Oh, just fucking do it, Stafford. Okay, that's not a bad amount of fluid to come out.
I think there's an element to which when your body does start breaking down that it gets you down as well, and it's a self-perpetuating cycle, really. It became more of a slog than an exhilarating challenge, really.
Patience is going, and I get this sort of weird rising feeling of it's sort of a cross between, it's not panic, it's sort of claustrophobia, but it's a real uneasy feeling. And I just want to get out. There's ants literally all over me, mosquitoes all the time. That sensation of just needing to have everything go away.
Although I was with Cho's from a very different culture. There's the language difference, and it isn't the same as having a lot of other guys around you with the banter and etc. And for me, yeah, that isolation meant that I did start to struggle.
I got very angry with Cho because he mislaid a bag that had all of the insect repellent in it and all of the talc in it, or talcum powder. All of us have got groins that have started to get rashes and infections between the legs and the testicles. Cho laughed and said, that's part of life, but as far as I'm concerned, that's not part of life. That's bad administration and it's unacceptable in the jungle. And so I was very, very, very annoyed. And that might sound a comical thing to get worried about when you're sitting in front of the TV at home, but I can assure you that not having any talc when your scrotum's rotting in the middle of the jungle is quite a serious thing. Cho's fucking me off no end.
I think because Cho and I became so close by the end of the expedition, he was almost like a brother. And I think in the same way that you can sound off verbally at your family, I ended up snapping at Cho very unreasonably.
Estábamos tranquilos ahí. Disculpe que esto fue mi error, ¿no? Que no vuelva a suceder eso. Y normal, el trauma a como hermanos, ¿no?
Good morning, it's Christmas Day, 2009, day 632 of the expedition.
It's Ed's second Christmas away. The rain is pouring, but the season of goodwill helps lift his depression.
Oh yes, Joe's just come back with a big load of fish. Nice work, Joe. Okay, so we have got a nice Christmas meal. Woo!
Oh yeah, they look good.
Happy Christmas.
His friendship with Cho is stronger than it's ever been. Ed's thoughts also turn to his dad, who died 10 years ago.
I had a bit of an emotional release. I probably didn't stop crying for about 2 hours. Bizarre, isn't it, when you call yourself an explorer and you need to have a 2-hour cry every now and again to sort your brain out.
By February, Ed and Cho have outrun the worst of the flooding and have reached the city of Manaus. Ed has followed the river for 4,000 kilometers, from when it started life as a tiny trickle. But now it's nearly 30 kilometers wide and is an industrial highway. They need to cross the river to higher, firmer ground before continuing on foot east towards the Atlantic coast.
At this stage, the river's started to become huge. The waves are vast. It's like paddling across the sea, really.
We've got to make sure that we're 90 degrees to the waves as they come in, otherwise they're just going to come straight over the side and we're going to sink, basically.
Ed and Cho are treated to one of nature's most incredible displays. The meeting of the waters, when two different rivers meet but don't mix. The Rio Solimões is the cloudy brown river. It runs quickly, picking up a lot of sediment. The Rio Negro is the black river. It's clear because it runs slower, carrying much less sediment. Because of their different densities, velocity, and temperature, the two rivers flow side by side for 6 miles before they finally fuse together and form the Rio Amazonas.
It's so exciting, I'm just so overexcited. We're actually finally here.
Industrialization has brought wealth to this part of the Amazon, but at a cost. The deforestation that Ed caught glimpses of in the jungle is now big business. This hardwood timber, from trees over 100 years old, is milled on site, then transported by road or river to be shipped all over the world.
It's very sad. It's always very sad to come out of the rainforest where it's so lush and where the animals are calling and where the birds are calling and come out and see a smouldering black field.
Ed and Cho will soon be able to track the river by the roads that service the logging. But the jungle has one more gift for Ed before he makes it out. Botflies are nature at its most devious. These tiny hairy flies lay their eggs under the skin of any warm-blooded mammal. Their larvae then live as parasites within the body.
The botfly laid an egg that grew inside my head and was eating away at the flesh.
Okay, we're going to use the super glue that I bought in order to suffocate the botfly. Always looking to innovate.
Hasta que tuve que agarrar una especie de espina de limón.
He carefully digs into Ed's scalp. being sure to get the larvae out in one piece.
Yeah!
Gracias, Joe.
Ed and Cho have left the jungle and are entering the final leg of their journey through the agricultural heartland of Brazil.
Walking the Amazon, obviously, to most people, quite rightly, conjures up images of rainforest and jungle. But here, all of the trees have been cut down, and you've got huge open green fields and large dusty road networks.
Ahead, after 2.5 years, Ed's body finally breaks down and the mission hangs in the balance.
I want to rip my skin off.
British explorer Ed Stafford and his guide Cho Sanchez are on the last leg of their mission to walk the entire length of the Amazon. If they make it, Ed will be the first person to complete this 7,000-kilometre journey on foot. In the next 10 days, the pair has to walk just under 400 kilometres to reach the city of Belém and the Atlantic Ocean. This will be the end of Ed's epic journey to walk the Amazon. They are now covering up to 40 kilometres per day on foot. Ed gives himself a final deadline.
I looked at the map and determined that it was 10 days to get to the end, so I organised my flights for that day, and I'd committed to everybody it was going to happen on that day.
Every step is a step towards civilization. Word begins to spread internationally that a British explorer is about to complete a 7,000-kilometre trek along the world's largest river.
El ejército británico se ha convertido en el primer hombre que ha recorrido toda la extensión del Amazonas.
This monumental journey began in April 2008.
From the map, it was obvious to me that we could achieve that quite easily, and then I made this huge navigational error.
Ed, used to dead reckoning across open country, decides to take a shortcut.
We've just spilled out onto the electricity pylon line, which I had misread Google Earth as being a road. It's clearly not a road, I mean, you can see.
It was just thick bramble bushes, essentially. And so we had this sort of comical following of the telegraph wires overhead.
Sometimes it's walkable, sometimes it's not. Then when it's not, you head into the trees.
The walking pace plummets. After 2 days battling through razor grass and scrub, they travel only 10 kilometres.
Look at my arm. That's razor grass all day, all day, all day. At the moment in the schedule, we're due to be walking about 55 kilometres a day, which is quite a lot with rucksacks. And if you say a fast walk is 5 kilometres an hour, then obviously 55k a day, talking 11-hour days.
After another 2 days in the scrub, they finally break back onto the road.
We've spilled out of the jungle for the very last time. Just this dusty track that will then lead to an asphalt highway.
They now have only a 300-kilometre road walk to the coast to complete their journey.
We have to do 108 kilometres in about 26 hours, solid, non-stop. Okay, we've now got about 75 kilometres to walk to the beach. And it's 1 a.m.
Then, only hours from the finish line, after over 7,000 kilometres trekking, Ed collapses.
I came up with this big rash, like a nettle sting rash all over my body.
And I want to rip my skin off. Got to get to the beach, and it's the last day of the expedition, and I'm on the floor in agony.
Ed forces himself back on his feet.
4 hours to go until we're able to say that we've walked the length of the Amazon River.
As the sun came up, the media crews just descended on us, and they're like commando teams. It was incredible.
So, even more bizarre.
And then, obviously, the physical exhaustion just evaporated completely, and we were just on this high of adrenaline. And then we could hear the sounds of the waves crashing, and we could smell the salt in the air. And then we rounded this corner and saw the Atlantic in front of us.
Welcome.
Desculpe, un momentino.
2.5 years of walking through the Amazon, and this is the Atlantic Ocean. I didn't think I was gonna be this happy. I've been grumbling and moaning all the way down the road. It's just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
Sí, lloró cuando él agarró la bandera de Inglaterra, o sea, todos los que habían hecho, y él me mira y me hace así y dice: aceptando esta aventura sí me cambió la vida. Yo creo que el único que nos puede dejar de ser amigos cuando ya nos vayamos al más allá o dejemos de existir.
After 860 days of walking, Ed has entered the record books.
I know he can complete this expedition on his own. He doesn't need me here.
I'm walking the Amazon on my own.
He's the first person to walk the entire length of the Amazon River.
My legs don't want to work at all.
This is the longest jungle trek in history. Back in the UK, Ed returns to a hero's welcome. His family sees him in the flesh for the first time in 2.5 years. While the great and the good of British exploration, who once honoured Ed's hero, David Livingstone, want to know, how on earth did he do it?
And walking the Amazon would seem to me, in the tradition of people who have taken on nature at its absolutely most difficult.
Nobody else in the world has ever done it because it is so incredibly difficult.
You look at some of the great explorers. I mean, Livingstone, I don't think he even knew exactly where he was going, got lost several times. And it's that ability to somehow keep yourself going when everything around you in the natural world is saying stop. I think you've got to be totally mad. Totally, completely, utterly mad.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ed Stafford.
My father's always tried to instill values in me. One value was commitment, and he always said, if you start something, then you need to see it through to the end. And that's the one thing that I think really hit home with me. And I always said if I completed this expedition that I'd like to dedicate it to my father, which I'd like to do now. Thank you very much.
The Royal Geographic Society accords Ed the honour of making him a fellow. And he joins the ranks of history's great explorers.
Wow, just amazing. And returning next Thursday at 9, a new series of the show that fixes the failings of troublesome tradesmen and goes after them. My favourite bit. We've botched together a preview of new cowboy builders in just a sec. Then, after the break, another hiking trip that gets utterly out of hand. John Cusack stars in The Contract in a couple of minutes.